What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Facts on the Ground. I'm Misty Winston, joined by my co-host Jesse Zerwell. Today, we have a very special guest, friend of the show, independent journalist, co-host of the Convo Couch, and my friend, Fiorella Isabel. Welcome back to Facts on the Ground.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be back.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for coming back, Fee.
Yeah. It's always good when fam comes by. So you were just in Peru, covering the elections there. And I'm super interested in this just because, of the work that you guys do on election integrity. I've really started paying more attention, not just in the United States, but in elections across the globe. So I think that maybe can we start with just kind of setting it up, giving some background to this election, why it's important, these two candidates, who they are, that kind of stuff, just kind of get everybody up to date on what all of this is.
Yeah, so this is a very important election for Peru because Peru has been plagued by corruption for the longest time, corrupt presidents. They recently had a whole protest of thousands in November because of the presidency and the Congress. The Congress is deemed a little too powerful in Peru. So this election in particular, though, brings back a lot of history with its baggage. So Keiko Fujimori is the daughter of Alberto Fujimori, who was a dictator. He ruled by decree in the sense of a neoliberal, fascist type of politics. He was extremely capitalist, extremely right wing, extremely privatized everything in Peru, gave everything out to foreign investors, foreign entities. And he came about as a result of this whole thing that happened in the rural areas of Peru, where this Marxist and Maoist revolution was beginning to happen. Initially, it was something that was supported by a lot of the leftists there, a lot of the rural indigenous populations that are more leftist because of need, because a lot of the capitalists and the investors come into their land and steal their land or just push them out or exploit them. So they started getting angry. And in comes this group called the Shining Path. It was made up of several intellectuals who had studied
Sendero Luminoso.
Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path for translation. And they had studied the work of Marx and Mao and other communists and socialist revolutionaries. And he came about through the school system, through teaching young people about these ideologies. Now, all of that happened prior to Fujimori coming in. And so one of these factions got out of hand when they started car bombings and they started bombing several areas in the capital, Lima. One of these areas being Miraflores, where people died. They were initially trying to get rid of the rich. That was the whole thing. They were trying to really oust the rich and push the rich out. And instead, what came back was a lot of violence, and they started fighting with other leftist factions. There's a lot of complexity that goes into that we don't have time for. But just so you guys know, they used that was happening in Peru to push Fujimori in. So that his whole agenda took over. And with the help of the CIA, through his right-wing man, his name was Vladimiro Montesino, they cleared out these factions, but also generally just monolithically made them all one thing, putting other leftists that had nothing to do with that group into one pile, and started literally killing massive amounts of people, and started sterilizing women, indigenous women, without their consent, forcing these sterilizations all over the place. And a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people lost their jobs. Many of the affected were teachers in particular, right, during this time. So that was in the 90s that all of this was happening. One of the reasons my family emigrated to the United States in particular, personally, is because of all of the things that were happening between the terrorist groups and the terrorist attacks, and of course the right-wing government of Fujimori. So to me, this is a very personal issue that I've grown up with for the longest time. And so now you have his daughter, Keiko Fujimori, facing a leftist by economic means a leftist, a teacher, a worker who has been involved in several strikes. And his name is Pedro Castillo. And Pedro Castillo is of the party called Peru Libre, meaning a free Peru. Keiko Fujimori is of the party called Fuerza Popular, or Popular Force. And her party is definitely on the right spectrum, but extremely global capitalist. So it's not too far from a neoliberal agenda. And his party is more focused on maintaining the wealth that Peru produces constantly inside Peru, because 70% of the wealth that is exported outside of Peru. Peru is one of the richest countries in terms of minerals, in terms of land, and they don't see any of that wealth. All of that wealth goes completely outside of the country. So his motto was no more poor people in a rich country. And so that's where we're at. So there is this fear of the specter of communism being tied to Pedro Castillo through the mainstream media propaganda, because the mainstream media is extremely corrupt there, just like it is here. And they have called him a terrorist. They have called his supporters a terrorist. They have called them communists. And he's not a communist. I would equate him to a typical union pro-worker teacher here in America. Now, obviously, it's difficult to compare because it's a completely different country and they have other needs more that require more nationalist kind of points of views, because if you think about it, a lot of Peru's industries are privatized by global capitalists and these investors, and so he wants to keep that inside, and he wants to redo the constitution that is still the constitution that occurred during Fujimori, that was in power during Fujimori, and so he wants to redo that. He wants to have healthcare for everybody. His policies are pretty progressive by our terms. So the issue is that you have this whole neo-fascism against this more social labor workers labor movement happening in Peru. But the propaganda has gotten in the way and has vilified this man as having ties to Movadef, which is the other part of the Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path. And it's been really tough for people because, unfortunately, a lot of the propaganda did reach the capital of Lima, and a lot of the people in Lima are far less educated on what's actually happening because they are brainwashed by the propaganda than the people who are in the rural provincial areas. So that's the background of why this election is so it's such a contentious election.
Yeah. And you said that Fujimori's, I guess, retinue or team or constabulary force, you said it was called the Popular Force?
Yeah, it's called Fuerza Popular. Yeah.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, Juan Guaido's party, or the party he once belonged to, is called Popular Will. So yeah, an ironic connection there.
Yeah, they're trying to make it like they're the populists of the country, right? This is what the people want, when in reality, even people who voted for Keiko Fujimori, because I was there and most of them did it so begrudgingly because they feared the specter of communism, specifically Venezuela, because what's happening in Peru is that Venezuelans are coming to Peru and seeking employment there. And what's happening is that these businesses are doing what we do by outsourcing jobs. What they're doing is they are giving these jobs to Venezuelans instead of Peruvians, because they don't have to pay them a living wage, and they have to pay Peruvians a living wage, and they have to provide healthcare for Peruvians. When an employer hires you, they have to give you healthcare, and they have to give you a minimum amount of wage. It's around 800 soles a month. And so they know that they can give Venezuelans less money, and Venezuelans will take it. Mm-hmm. So what's happening is there's this kind of xenophobia developing too, with, Venezuelans are coming in here and taking our jobs, because they kind of are, but it's not their fault. It's the fact that these people are trying to exploit them. And so that all of that is happening. And so they're like, well, we don't want to be Venezuela, right? We don't want that. We don't want Maduro. And even Pedro Castillo and his party Peru Libre have formed more of an alliance and a kinship with Evo Morales and Bolivians rather than Venezuelans, because of just like the stigma that is attached to Maduro and all the Venezuelans that really have come into the country.
And that's such an intentional propaganda campaign. It really is. You're right. You're absolutely right. That is such a and it's not, this is nothing new. Western powers have been doing this for a long ass time. You know, they have to demonize communism in order to, I mean, these are capitalist, money hungry people. Like this is what they do. Yeah. So so the process in Peru is actually quite great. The election process is, especially compared to the United States, which is so funny to me that we, you know, claim to be like this bastion of democracy.
We have an election process here.
We have a selection process here.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and so I'll let you explain it, but they have like a very decent, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. No voting system, no electoral process is ever going to be perfect. But it is pretty good. There's no weights, things like that. So can we just talk a little bit about what the election process and how election integrity looks like, or what election integrity looks like in Peru?
Right. Normally Peru has a very fluid process. You know, the thing is, they have, by our standards, their elections would be considered right wing because they have one day to vote. They have they have to present a form of ID, which is called the DNI, and it has a number. It's like a mix between their social security number, your social security, and your ID. So it has like a number, and it has your picture. And for a lot of things, you need it, but specifically for voting, you need to present that ID. And you have one day to vote, and you must vote if you're under the age of 65. If you're over the age of 65, you can if you choose to. But if you're under, you must vote, or you will be fined anywhere between 22 to 88 soles, depending on how much money you make. And you are, of course, you're like assigned a certain, you know, precinct to go vote in. Very similar to here. Their schools are used during COVID. Some stadiums and bigger areas were used. Now, during COVID, they didn't do mail-in ballots. They don't do ballot harvesting. They don't do mail drop-off boxes. They don't do any of that. What they do is they suggested that you go in between certain times. So like everybody's has a number, and the last number on their DNI was configured to equate to a certain time you would go. So like if your number was 8, you were like towards the end. So you would go like at 6 o'clock, right? And the polls were open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It wasn't enforced. Like you could go outside of that time slot, but they were doing it so not all these people went at once. And that's how they were
try to stagger it.
Yeah, but you have to vote in person. There's no, like, you can't just do the only way. And oh, by the way, and if you're a foreigner living in another country, and my parents had to do this for a while, you go to the embassy in, like, let's say Miami, and you vote there in person. So you, even as a foreigner, you don't send in a ballot. I'm just saying that because they don't believe that it's secure enough to have to do it the other way, right? And so one of the things that Pasta and I have always covered is there has to be a balance between accessibility and security. Now, one of the things they do lack is accessibility for the disabled. Sometimes there were reports that I witnessed where somebody's precinct was the second floor and they were disabled, so they had to bring down the table so that they could vote there, because they're very strict about las mesas, which we'll get into in a minute. The certain people are in certain tables, and then that's how they tabulate everything at the end. Now, that's where they kind of need more resources, right, to make it more accessible to people who are disabled, etc. But their security in terms of everything, they're paper ballots everywhere. They recently got rid of electronic voting machines that were only in Lima and certain little pockets that were more cosmopolitan. They got rid of all of that. Everything was paper ballots this time. So you can literally have like a paper trail. Yes. And of course, they had observers come in. They always have observers come in, right? Normally. And so there were observers coming in this time as well. So that's the essence. And the most important thing I want to point out is that the average wait time was between 3 to 5 minutes from the moment the person came in to vote until the moment they got out. Everybody, 3 to 5 minutes, boom, boom, boom. It was very, very quick. And they did not start counting ballots until every single person had already voted. So those are the differences between us and Peru. In America, we have Democrats and Republicans arguing about whether, you know, the legalities of how many feet somebody has to be, or who can give somebody water and food, because people are waiting in line for 7 hours. How about we fix the fact that people shouldn't be waiting in line?
That's crazy.
Like that long. This is insane to me.
It's
right
the
now.
United States of America in the year 2021, and people have to wait in line for 7 hours to vote. Like, we should be deeply ashamed of that shit. Deeply ashamed. Are you kidding? And we claim to be like so great. Table. Fuck off. We're not great. We can't even run an election.
Paper ballots aren't even.
Country can do it.
Yeah,
we can't.
Paper ballots aren't even on the table with regard to what they're proposing for election reform nowadays. I read a New York Times piece recently, and I did a search for the word paper, and not even paper came up. So
yeah,
that speaks volumes.
Yeah, it really does. We don't give a shit about election integrity in this country. Well, I shouldn't say we don't. Our politicians do not, because they all benefit greatly from the fact that our elections are complete garbage.
Because they don't have any integrity.
Yeah. Right.
So
yeah.
But one thing I do want to point out was that this election has been different than others. Of course, this election, normally the process is really fluid. You would know who won by now, but that didn't happen this time. Pedro Castillo, with 100% of the votes counted, is the effective winner. However, and this irritated me to no end when I see Westerners saying, "Oh, he won." No, he hasn't won officially yet. He hasn't gone out there and said, "I won." The Peruvian government hasn't said he won. The president of Peru hasn't said he won. No, it's not official until the ONPE, which is the Oficina Nacional de Procesos Electorales, the office of the National Office of Electoral Processes, announces that he won. And the reason is because Keiko Fujimori has alleged that there has been fraud. Fraude en mesa is what she's alleging, that there were more people from the other party representing working the tables, that people were ballots were marked when they shouldn't have been validated. So she's trying to invalidate about 200,500 votes, and it's like 800 and something mesas, which equates to 200,500 votes. And if she gets her way, right, if you're doing the math, he's about 70,000 votes ahead. If she gets her way on any of that, he could potentially have the election robbed from him. And this has never happened before. And another thing they did was this organization called the JNA, which is just like the judiciary over the national election. They extended the amount of time she had to contest the election, which is illegal. They just made an exception for her. And so people are alleging on the ground, reporters and supporters of Castillo are saying that somebody got paid off there, which easily happens in Peru, not usually on elections, but usually when it comes to the police and when it comes to like corrupt politicians, somebody paid them off because this isn't normal. Now she's spending over $200,000 in lawyer fees and in fees to do this whole thing, but she has no actual substance. She has no witnesses. She has nothing but like her own, like, oh, we think people cheated because in some provinces I got 0 votes and that's impossible. But you have to understand that in these provinces is where these people are very poor. They don't even have like electricity, and they're suffering because of the actions of people from her party, corrupt politicians like her. So they despise her. And they made it known to all of the media that they despise the lying media and they despise people who are lying on behalf of the media. So it's all of this is happening, right? And the Keiko, on top of all of this, has an accusation for money laundering during 2011 and 2016 for campaigns in Brazil. She was caught money laundering, like taking money out from Peru and committing all this corruption, and she's facing 30 years in jail, and she was still allowed to run for the presidency, which is insane to me. Yes. And so that all of that is happening, right? And that's why it's not a done deal. People will get out in the streets and they will not allow her to win. I am telling you, like, while I was there, like, they were like, we're not going to allow her in. Like, after what happened with her dad, and she's the same person. She will pardon her dad, who is in jail right now. She will pardon her brothers who are involved in narcotics and drug trafficking. So all of that is at stake, and the resources, the lithium and the minerals that in Peru are really what this is about here, especially for the West, who it's convenient for them for Keiko to win.
Yeah, that's why people need to keep eyes on Peru, and they need to make sure that they're talking about this, because it's not like the West is above like getting involved and turning shit over for Fujimori, or did I say that right? Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's a real problem. Like, this is one of the biggest things that we face is, especially when we live in a country where we're still talking about Russiagate. But it's entirely possible that we will get involved in Peru's elections to fuck shit up. It's just like a normal thing. It's normalized. That's fine. It's fine when we do it.
We probably already are.
Yeah, for sure.
Fee, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, since we've been talking about Fujimori a lot, is a headline I see here from the Japan Times. Peru prosecutor seeks to detain Keiko Fujimori as she challenges election runoff. And this was published on Friday, yesterday. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. This prosecutor, who has had his life threatened, is seeking to put her behind bars because she shouldn't have been allowed to run in the first place. And she's facing this threat, and they're like, wait a minute, like, she broke the law. So what she did was she met with one of the witnesses in her trial, and she wasn't supposed to meet with them. So that's breaking what's called breaking her probation, so to speak, because she wasn't in jail, but she had to abide by certain regulations, and she broke those. And so now technically she can be put behind bars. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she is allowed to just parade and just push all this, and like, just is really just speaks to the corruption in a lot of politicians in Peru, unfortunately. On the other side, though, fortunately, a lot of people from Pedro Castillo's party, Peru Libre, have been elected into office as well. And they have the majority. They have about like 55% or so, while Keiko's party has like 26% or around them. The problem is that other factions, there are other parties there. Unlike the United States, there's a multi-party system where there are other parties that can compete. And the problem with those other parties, one of them is called the Apristas. There are several others, is that they have united against Pedro Castillo and the Peru Libre, because they are pushing that whole, el comunismo nunca más, communism never again, because they're saying that, that he is tied to the shining path through one of the leaders of the party. His name is Vladimir Cerrón, and of course his name is Vladimir, which is like,
right. That doesn't help. That doesn't help, fam.
Yeah, it doesn't help. But yeah, so there's all of that happening. So he is going, if he wins, like if this doesn't get overturned and they do what's right and he wins this election, he is bound to face extreme opposition in Congress, extreme smear jobs. I mean, and possible intervention. I hope he has good
bodyguards.
Yeah,
just saying.
But he's like, this guy is like, literally, a lot of people compare him to Evo Morales because he's like, of indigenous rural roots. He's a rondero, which is what it's like these guys that wear these hats and these ponchos, and they work the land, but they also kind of form their own community policing against a lot of the people that come rob them, against a lot of the government, because the government still today, right now, is pushing these campesinos who own their land. They don't have a lot, but they own land. And what these people are doing is they're coming in and they're saying, we want to buy your land. And they say no. And they don't care that they say no. They like push them out of their land and they take their land. So that's why these people are so against the capitalist system and the imperialism. And they actually were marching, that faction of this group was marching along with Bolivians during the time when Evo Morales was getting pushed out, and when they were trying to protest back to get his party back in. They kept saying fuera Yankees, because they know that the United States and NATO and the West pretty much stand in the way.
Just like fuck off Yankees, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yankee go home.
Yeah.
Yankee go home. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I figured as much. Yeah. Okay. So how long is it going to take for this process? Like how long is because it's just that she's just challenging the 200,500 votes. How long does that take? Is that like a long process? Because in the United States, that would take like for fucking ever. We can't do anything fast.
Yeah. So it's taking like 5 to 15 days. It started a couple days ago, and it's going to take like 5 to 15 days. So yeah, I mean, but I was like even thinking about extending my stay, but then like I was told, no, this is going to take a while. Yeah. Like this is going to take like some time, because she keeps pushing it, and they just are allowing her to do this. And people are scared that if this happens and they annul those votes, those ballots, and it's not even ballots, it's the tally of ballots, to be specific.
I thought I heard that you okay, because I've been catching up on all of this stuff, and they destroyed the ballots right after like your ballot is tallied. They destroy the paper ballots then,
right?
Which is, I mean, like I said, their electoral system's not perfect, because that I disagree with, but
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
we disagree too. Pasta and I were like, oh yeah, that's not. I mean, I understand why they do it, because they don't want it to be manipulated with, but at the same time, you might want to wait a little bit, because if something was marked wrong on that, it's like a tally sheet, right? So let's say the province is Puño, and it has like, okay, here are all the votes for Keiko, here are all the votes for Castillo, here's the tally. That's what's called las actas. So that's what they're going over. So if you don't have those ballots to verify, then you have to go by that. Yeah. So while their process is thorough up until that point, one of the things when I spoke to observer Medea Benjamin, who was there, she said that the process is very fluid in the front of the house, meaning like that's what we call it, like the front of the house, meaning like the lines and all of that stuff, how people get in there, like the records, all of that. It's very fluid. The counting, however, is done privately, and the counting is taking longer than it should have. And the media didn't show all the things that they normally showed. They didn't do all the exit polls they normally do. And so that was like off. And also the bribing. There were reports of bribing, people bribing for votes for Keiko Fujimori, older people being bussed and told that they had to vote for Keiko Fujimori, because remember, if you're over age 65, you don't have to vote. So they were targeting those people as well. So there's all of that. That's where like they lack a little bit of security and a little bit of like fluid of a fluid process. But yeah, that's they destroy the ballots. So now they're just going over the actas, and it could potentially overturn the election, which is why it's important that people don't think, oh, he's got this, he won, because before you know it, it's not going to be that. We can't put it past the corrupt government. She has a lot of money. She's got a lot of people that she knows in high places.
She has all of big business, and she has, I mean, I'm sure all of those people are in, like, she is in their pockets, or they're in her pocket, whatever that expression, however that's supposed to go. But they've invested a lot of money in her. They're going to try to protect their investment however they can. But you talk about how people shouldn't say, he's got it in the bag. He's got it in the bag. We've been noticing over the past, week or so, there's a lot of people who now seem to think that they know about Peruvian elections, and they're calling it like for this person, and that's not over. So how frustrating is that for you? Because seriously, it's people that they've never covered a Peruvian election before in their life. They don't focus on election integrity at all in general. But they're talking as if they know how this process works, and how, I mean, isn't that frustrating for you? Because it's frustrating for me, and I'm not even you. So
oh my God, that's hilarious. I think it comes down to American exceptionalism. I mean, there's this whole, I just seen this whole trend of Americans to think they know better than the people in other countries. I've seen it with Palestine. I saw it with Syria, and now I'm seeing it with Peru. And like, it's really frustrating, especially to me, being somebody from Peru and also being like studying elections in America and in Peru, and then seeing these people like say things like, oh yeah, nonchalantly, like this is fact, like no. And you know, I saw Jen Perlman make a status.
Orientalism. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to make the observation that it's a form of Orientalism that's taking place in the Southern Hemisphere, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's
or with regard to the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, and it's very much like, stop imposing your American duality, like this viewpoint of, oh, left versus right and Democrat versus Republican, into every other country, because by all accounts, Pedro Castillo would be completely canceled by the vast majority of progressives here. He's not there on marijuana. He's not there on like, all like super like on LGBTQ issues. And those are things he sure, I disagree with him on, but I'm not going to go say like, oh, you're doing this wrong. You're canceled. Like, and I see that trend too happening with that, because what you have to understand as an American is the culture of other people and where they're at, and like the things that they have been brought up with, the aspect of religion. I see it with Iran too. People are like, oh, they're all Muslim and fundamentalist and all of this. It's like, well, but that's like, your viewpoint doesn't have to agree. It doesn't exist everywhere else.
Not
like,
everyone has to live your life.
Yeah, you're
not how this
works.
Yeah. And not the center of the universe.
Yeah, it's American exceptionalism is basically what it is. And so I saw earlier today, I got really pissed off because I saw Jen Perlman put out a status trying to equate, I don't know why at this point we're still talking about Donald Trump, but trying to equate the Keiko Fujimori's attempt to like overturn these ballots and annul these ballots with Donald Trump's calls of fraud. Because if there's one thing that you know about Peru, and just this discussion that we've had, is that their elections are far more transparent. And by the way, this whole counting, this whole process of Las Actas in Peru will be televised and open to all of the media, like completely. So they're like, you can't compare apples and oranges. Peru has a completely different election system that has actually elicited even as corrupt as the presidents have been, their election system has been actually like fairly decent. It's just that the propaganda and stuff gets in the way of people.
That's such a fatuous comparison on her part. It's childish, and it's so obviously tailored for her to try to score political points. I want to know when she started becoming concerned about Peru or South America or even Latin America for that case. I don't think she cares. And
it's like, does she think that people started trying to rig elections or started trying to like challenge elections with Donald Trump? Seriously, do these people think that everything bad started with Donald Trump? Like there was none of this? Because seriously, I mean, she says, because I'll read it. Pedro Castillo will be the next president of Peru. Okay, Keiko Fujimori, I don't know why I can't say her fucking name, in typical fascistic fashion, has alleged electoral fraud by a candidate who opposes American imperialism. Her actions, this is my favorite sentence. Her actions show Trump's refusal to accept the election results can have detrimental effects worldwide. Are you fucking kidding me? He didn't invent this shit. Jesus Christ.
This is why I got so angry at this. This is her third time running. She ran before Trump was even a thing. Like, Peru has 5-year election increments. This is her third time running, guys. Her third time. Like, they think that Trump, like, and the claims of election fraud now forever are gonna be the only reason why people contest elections all over the world. She learned from her father. Her father actually committed a lot, like bribery and corruption to win elections. That's why it was a dictatorship. That this right-wing ideology that these people speak of began decades.
Everybody
Before
contests
Trump.
election. Hillary Clinton contested the election. She tried to claim that Russia rigged the election. She contested the election. Everybody contests the election. Everybody, like everybody that loses is like, that's fucked up. I didn't really lose. This happened, or they'll find somebody to blame,
Trump
or there's
did
some
it. I'm
excuse.
sorry.
Yeah. Well, now it's gonna every time it'll be Trump did it.
They
It's
write books
Trump's
about
fault.
what happened.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's really the whole
buy
book.
that book.
It's all. None of that is what happened. None of that is why she lost.
Right.
None of
Yeah.
it. Not one
Yeah.
thing she mentions in that book is why she actually lost.
Yeah. And that's part of the
Um,
narrative control we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
These books even.
It's always about the narrative control. Damn it. I know I keep saying that, and I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm just going to keep saying it.
But it is.
Narrative control is everything. It's every fucking thing.
And these people perpetuate, like, they call themselves progressives and leftists and anti-imperialists and all this bullshit. And they regurgitate the same narrative management talking points by the CIA and by the state agencies. It is so frustrating beyond repair, especially when she doesn't know what she's talking about, either about elections in America or why these people were so upset and why they were calling about election fraud. Because you don't have to agree with me, but you can't tell me that we have fucking fair elections in this country.
No.
You cannot tell me beyond reasonable doubt that this election was fair when from the beginning people were like, yeah, Bernie got cheated. Well, if Bernie got cheated, doesn't by that default make the election completely invalid?
If the election happened in the United States of America, it was garbage. Period. End of story. I don't know why that is even a contentious statement.
It's such a controversial
I don't know
statement.
why people think like, oh my God, why do you support Trump? I don't fucking support Trump. I just happen to know that all of our elections are garbage. That's
Yeah.
not like up for debate, you guys. That's not up for debate. I feel pretty safe about saying that is a fact. That is just straight on. We have proprietary software that you can't even you can't audit an election in this country. We have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. None
And
whatsoever.
when you try to do it, we're like the only channel besides, I think, Ben Swan on RT covering it from the left, like really intricately covering it. And then we're getting
He's
like,
really
oh,
good.
you're a Trump supporter. You're a right winger. You're trying to validate the big lie. Like, you're using the same narratives these people like want you to use. What are you talking about here? If you believe our elections are fair, I don't know what to tell you.
I really
talk
don't.
about, we overthrow governments all over the world. We have the CIA, we have state agencies, there's fascism literally crushing everybody's right to free speech. Julian Assange is in jail, but somehow our elections are sacred. Yeah, okay.
It's
Seriously?
so fucking ridiculous. It's like, honestly, I'm embarrassed for a lot of these people because they're people who they should know better. You should know better. Come on. This is
They
not,
do
this
know
shouldn't
better.
be. I know for whatever reason, there's this block. It's like this Trump thing like infected their brains. And it's not about fucking Donald Trump, you guys. Grow the fuck up. It's not about Donald Trump. Dude. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about election integrity. That's what it's about. Everybody should want election integrity, and pretending like that's not a problem just because you don't like Donald Trump doesn't help us get election integrity. It really doesn't. It sets us back quite a bit because now everybody's thinking that the elections are perfect. Everything's fine. This was the best election ever in the history of everdom. And we're the bastion of democracy and everybody can just simmer down. And that's not the case. Our elections are garbage and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. That's just reality. And I wish people could just be grown enough to step outside their bullshit and just admit that that's a fact. It's okay. That doesn't mean you like Donald Trump. It doesn't mean you support Donald Trump. I fucking hate Donald Trump. He's such a douche canoe. Like, he's like the epitome of like this creepy, gross, disgusting, oligarchic, monster of a human being. I don't like Donald Trump, but our elections are trashed. Those two things can happen at the same time. You know, I can hold those two thoughts at the same time.
I think these are smart people and calculating people, cunning people who know exactly what they're doing.
Some of them.
But they want to suckle at the teat of power, if you will. They want to be in a position of power. They want to be in a position of authority that's
or adjacent to power.
Right. It's the same thing we see with reporters in the press pool, the ones who ask the softball questions, and stuff is prepared before, or it's stenography either way, because
WikiLeaks showed us that they'll send in their articles to get pre-approved and shit.
Yeah. And you see the way that Jen Psaki, or if Biden's able to make it to the podium, the way they call out the journalists by their first names, Jim, John, etc. And those reporters love that because it gives them direct or it makes them feel like at least they have direct access to power. And I think these wannabe politicians are caught up in that same addiction, if you will. That's not the whole story, but I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah. And I think that you're right about some of them. I think some of them are just not all that bright.
Mhm.
Yeah.
With you.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And like
along.
we I mean, right now, like, you know, like the liberals and some of these progressives who have bought into that, right? Like what Steve says, like liberals and training wheels, they have bought into all of that. They think our elections or they're lying to themselves thinking that our elections are fine. But the other half of the country, the people on the right, they don't believe in our system. And then you have all the independents and the apolitical people who don't vote. And I have been told countless times by people I know who are not political, I don't vote because it doesn't matter. And they're right. It doesn't fucking matter. We don't have a fucking choice.
And it is again.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's good. I don't want anything to do with any of your fucking progressive candidates at all. You're not tackling elections. You're not tackling the national security.
They're not doing jack shit.
Fuck
they
off.
haven't done shit. Not a damn thing. It pisses me off. Like there are still people who are getting mad at me for calling them out. What the fuck have they done? Somebody please tell me. I want to know. Seriously, if you got something, show it to me. I want to know. I want to know something substantive that they've done that has made my life better in any way, shape, or form. Because all they've done is fucking capitulate to corruption the whole fucking time. They sell you a good game, like they talk a good game. They're real good at like blowing smoke up your ass, and you're real good at accepting it with a smile. But they don't give a shit about you, and they're not doing shit for you. Nothing. They're not doing anything. They didn't fight for Medicare for all, and then they told you that they couldn't do that because $15 an hour was more doable, and then they didn't even put up a fight for that. Like there wasn't even a fight, like not even a little like a whimper of a fight. Nothing. They didn't do jack shit on that. They haven't done anything. You're not getting student debt relief. You're getting nothing. I keep saying it's like at the end of Willy Wonka, and you lose, sir. You get nothing.
Well,
and
we
that's
gotta,
yeah.
we got to take care of Israel first, and then we can get to ourselves.
8 billion, right?
Yeah.
$8 billion to Israel.
Yeah, it's fine. $10 million a day to Israel. They can have healthcare and blow up Palestinians. It's totally fair.
And then Chuck Schumer has the audacity to stand up and whine, how are we going to pay for it all?
Yeah.
Well,
but they just increased the military budget again, and nobody says, how are we going to pay for that? Not one person said that. Nobody on mainstream media asked that question. But if you even mention making sure everybody can go see a doctor, well, how are you going to pay for that? How are you going to pay for that?
And the worst part about all of this is that even when it comes to the issue of Palestine, these leftists on the West don't listen to Palestinians when Ilhan Omar was literally equating Hamas to being equal to what the United States and Israel does and standing against crimes against humanity on all ends. She was both citing the whole thing. Like what happens? Oh, she gets attacked by right wingers and Zionists in the Democratic Party as usual, as we expect, political theater at its finest. And then what happens? Oh, hashtag I stand with Ilhan.
And now you're not talking about Palestine anymore.
You're
talking
Palestinians?
About I don't give a fuck about Ilhan Omar. First of all, she was wrong. The United States is far worse than Hamas. Far worse. It's not even close. It's not even close. It's not even close.
Hamas is the only self-defense and resistance, aside from other factions in Gaza, that Palestinians in Gaza have to protect themselves. And they, under occupation and under international law, have every right to resist by any means necessary. And if that includes firing Qassam rockets into Tel Aviv, where, by the way, the IDF's or IOF, if you prefer, their military headquarters is located. The people we always hear from about Palestinians using their children as human shields. So
yeah, they put their military base in the middle of a fucking neighborhood and then cry about human shields.
That comparison to me speaks volumes about not just her aspirations for political power, but the fact that she doesn't know anything, and she milks the refugee thing so much.
Well, and she's a coward. She immediately walked shit back.
Yeah.
I mean, first she just like she equated the United States and Israel to Hamas, and people freaked the fuck out for the wrong reason. Because I was like, no, you're wrong. The U.S. and Israel are way worse. It's not close.
Right.
So they're all freaking out over the wrong reason. And then, like a little coward, she completely turns tail and is like, oh no, I'm not. There's no moral equivalency. And she's right, but she's again saying that for the wrong reason.
Right.
She's being apologetic to empire, and when in fact that there's no comparison. It's seriously, I can't even believe this is like a controversial. Like this shouldn't even be a conversation we're having. This isn't close.
But look at, she knows what she's talking about.
But look at independent media, or not even like, look at progressive commentators and YouTubers. Look what they're talking about. Oh my God, I stand with Ilhan. Look, poor Ilhan.
I stand with Palestinians.
And it's all of them, like Westerners. It's not, none of them are Palestinian who are saying that, right? Listen to fucking Palestinians. Listen to Peruvians. Listen to Syrians. Listen to people in Colombia. Like, stop letting.
Listen to Black people in your own country. Stop listening to white commentators and start,
Yeah, dude. Like, they just like.
Can I say that as a white commentator?
So stupid, dude. Like, yeah, but you understand what I'm talking about here.
No,
both of you do.
I mean, I can't but I
you get what I'm saying, right? At least.
Yeah.
And
Youssef Mounier, who's a really good commentator, Palestinian commentator. He's based in DC. I'm forgetting the name of the organization he works for, but it's a Palestinian solidarity organization. And he put out this tweet in response to, I forget the person, and this was a few years ago, but it was really concise and really to the point with regard to this sort of Western entitlement we're talking about. You don't get to tell people under occupation or people in other countries how to resist or how they should vote. Something to that effect. And I think that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, that does hit the nail. Yeah. But, and also I'm not excusing, Ilhan Omar does absolutely face a tremendous amount of racism,
of course,
and misogyny, and just, she gets some of the most disgusting and vile comments I've ever seen on twitter.com. Real
100%.
talk. I'm not at all condoning that in any way, but I don't stand with Ilhan Omar. I stand with Palestinians. I'm sorry that she has to deal with the hate that she gets. I'm fairly certain she knew what she was signing up for. I don't think that anybody going into that position of power you can't tell me that you don't know that you're going to be opening yourself up to that. I mean, that's just how politics works. You're now in charge of people's lives. You're going to get pushback if you're not doing your job, and fairly, like, that's a fair thing, not the stuff she's getting, but you should welcome pushback. So I'm not condoning the bullshit treatment that she gets, but I stand with Palestine. She is a very comfortable, rich congressperson, in the United States. She is not living under occupation. She's not dealing with, just unbelievable oppression and death and destruction and chaos. So I don't stand with her. I stand with Palestine, and it's really unfortunate that she can't speak the truth, because I know she knows better. I know she does. I know they do.
One thing I want to add to that about her is people fawned over her when she questioned Elliot Abrams a few years ago. And I'm probably going to get shit for this, or maybe not. I don't know that anybody pays attention to me, but I thought that line of questioning of hers was pathetic and so obviously set up, and it was embarrassing.
I just don't care. Like, I'm not impressed by, some questions or a speech or a tweet. I'm not fucking impressed by that. Do something.
But the fact that she was able to question a bona fide war criminal and was obviously chosen and groomed to present that questioning and performed that way.
That shit's theater.
Right. And why should we stand with that? And why should we laud that? So many people afterward were like, she took Elliot Abrams to task. No, she didn't. She stumbled over her questions. I think one of the first words she uttered in her line of questioning, it was a complete mispronunciation. And okay, people mispronounce things sometimes, but then as she went on, it was almost like she was stuttering. And we saw the same thing with AOC when she was asked by Margaret Hoover on PBS about what she meant.
AOC does better in a speech than she does in an interview.
Yeah,
she gives a good speech.
That was when she quit Palestine, so to speak.
turned her back entirely on
Yeah.
Palestinians. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is all theater. I mean, it's all
Right.
you know, they get their I still think that they have like their own little niche that they're allowed to like be kind of brave, and they're allowed to speak out a little bit, go across the line just a tiny bit so that they can remain some credibility. But people, I genuinely, please stop being impressed by speeches and like lines of questioning in a congressional hearing. None of that shit fucking matters. I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care if you can like lecture Elliot Abrams. What does that do for me? It does nothing for me. He doesn't care. He's going to like take the lecture and then go home and sit in his mansion and get drunk and not give a shit about what you said. And he's still going to continue to be a corrupt piece of shit. You didn't accomplish anything. You did nothing. Like, it's just a show. It does nothing to improve the lives of people anywhere. So I don't care. What's your voting record? What are you doing? How are you using your platform and your privilege and your position to further the betterment of lives for people in this country? And it's so weird to me, the excuses that people will make for this group of people, the squad, whatever the fuck you want to call them. It's so weird to me. They haven't done jack shit, and there are still like these unbelievable fangirls out there just making excuses for everything. They haven't done, like, their voting records are terrible. They just abstained from voting to give more money to the cops, knowing that was the make or break between it. And these are the people that are leading your progressive movement. Oh, and you wonder why I don't want any part of it. It is shit. Yeah. It's garbage. They're hipster liberals. That's all it is. I used to call them liberals who want healthcare, but then force the vote happened, and I'm like, okay, maybe they don't actually want healthcare. Like, they're not willing to do anything to get this. Yeah. Force the vote. Like, I'm so tired. First of all, I'm a little ranty today. I'm really sorry about that, you guys.
That's fine.
But force the vote really pissed me off, because there shouldn't have been a conversation about that. First of all, the progressives shouldn't have even been considering voting for Nancy Pelosi from the word go. That shouldn't have even been a thought. And the only reason they should have ever been like, okay, we'll vote for you, is if they got like a laundry list of concessions in advance. Like, I want that shit in advance. I'm not waiting for it. I want it now, because I know that she'd back out of it. And they didn't get shit, and they voted for her anyway. But to not even like put up a tiny fight for healthcare and use maybe use a little bit of your leverage. That's their whole fucking point was to go and challenge the Democratic establishment. That was the whole fucking point. And they haven't done jack shit to do that. And people are still making excuses for them. It's, oh God.
Well, it goes back to cult of personality, which we've talked about a lot too. And a lot of people want saviors, and they gravitate toward people like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Ro Khanna, and these politicians, whom on the surface they seem
play
like
the role
they're
well.
decent and they're honest actors, but they're really not. You know, Ro Khanna was out there speaking out about Yemen, and where is he now? You don't hear anything from him about Yemen. And
well, see, that's why I think that they're given their cause. You know, he had Yemen, he's allowed to speak out about Yemen, and, you know, each one has their own thing that they're allowed to be like a little bit louder about, a little bit braver on, put on their little show, and then that's it. But it's always, it always works out so the vote, it never goes anywhere. Nothing ever goes anywhere. It's always it's very mathematical, figure out the numbers. It's such a show. Electoral politics is broken, 100% broken.
And it's important to criticize these politicians, especially in light of what we've been talking about with Peru, because they and their softball politics enable U.S. empire to get away with crimes in Latin America, with, if you want to be nice and call it meddling in Latin America and South America. So in a sense, what they do say matters. For example, what Ilhan Omar said when she was questioning Elliot Abrams, because I think it enables the expansion of empire. Basically, the U.S. trying to fulfill the Monroe Doctrine. And that's something we have to pay attention to, because, again, on the surface, these progressives might seem nice or like they're well-intentioned, but what they're really doing, because they want to preserve their careers above everything else, is, again, enabling the expansion of American empire and destroying other people's countries and lives.
Yeah. I mean, they're just creating this whole idea that it's somehow fixable and reformable through this whole little show of electing more people, like the squad. You know, now it's Nina Turner, and Nina Turner refuses to respond to Misty
We have called, we have emailed, I have tweeted, and she is ignoring the ever loving fuck out of me. And I hope she knows I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Like, you can come to my event, you cannot come to my event. If you come to my event, it's going to be a lot better. And that's not like, I'm not like threatening. This is how I am. I'm just going to come for you. This is not like, I'm over. I'm done playing games. This is too important. I'm done with these shitheads. Like, if you want to pretend to claim like you care about, no, I'm done. We need to expose these people.
They need to feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
They need to feel uncomfortable. They've been comfortable for too long. And like, one other thing about Peru is that no matter what happens there, no matter how many corrupt people are elected, what they do is they get out in the streets and they get rid of them. They're like, no, we're going to get on the streets until you get the fuck out, until you're uncomfortable. We don't do that in this country. We can't even do that. Why can't we do that here? We need to learn from Latin American countries in the global South.
Look at Colombia right now. Colombia right now in the streets, like into it, like they're into it. Like it's brutal there right now. And listen, I get why people are, first of all, Americans are the most propagandized country on earth, as Steve Poikonen likes to point out. He's absolutely right. And so a lot of people have no idea how bad it actually is. And not only that, that we don't have healthcare. They can't like go, on strike or whatever without having to worry about, oh, well, my kid needs to go to a doctor. How am I going to pay for that? Like, how am I going to? And so, a lot of these countries that are able to go out and strike all the time, I have to give us a little bit of leeway on that, because I get that not having a social safety net, that makes it so much more difficult for us to really get something moving in the streets. And that's why I have been saying for the longest time that mutual aid has to come first. It has to come first. It has to come first. There is no other way. We have to have a solid mutual aid system nationwide that will be able to maintain a level of support for people if we get in the streets. I mean, that's the only way we're going to ever, otherwise we're going to fail. We will fail. We will absolutely fail.
Our friend of the show and comrade, Awkward, put out a really good thread yesterday regarding mutual aid.
There was an organizing call.
Yeah. He DM'd it to me, and I went through the whole thing. There's some good video clips. So if anybody
my friend runs Myco Mutual. So it's a really cool idea. It's an online decentralized mutual aid system for. And
then of course Keith McHenry from Food Not Bombs has been tweeting a lot
about
badass mutual aid, and mutual aid is super important. So we need to.
Roam's out in the streets getting it done.
Yeah.
We need more of that. We need more of that. And we need to start really thinking about a long-term sustainable program, because that's what we're going to, if we're going to get in the streets, it's going to have to be a sustained effort.
Right.
And we cannot back down, because if we do, we lose. And then honestly, that would be devastating. That would be it. That would be the end. I don't know if we could come back from that if we fail the first time. Like, we're only going to get one shot at this.
And I think I can speak for all of us and say that we're all anti-imperialists, and that necessitates an internationalist perspective. And so what we're dealing with in this country is, in that sense, tied to what's happening in Peru, or what's happening in Bolivia, or what's happening in Guatemala, where Kamala Harris recently went and told them, do not come, which I think is what she tells her husband as well. And
stop.
Point being, there's a for people like us, and that's not to say we're in an exclusive club, but there's a tie there. And if you're going to pay attention to oppression at home, you have to pay attention to oppression abroad. And
it's all tied to empire. It's all the global oppression. It all is all tied to empire. All of it. We need a global solidarity movement against empire. Period. End of story. That's the only way. And we're starting to see it. You're starting to see certain countries starting to come together, against Western empire, and that's encouraging. But we need a lot more of it, and a lot faster. And what troubles me the most is just the United States populace. I don't know how we break through to Americans. I really don't know how we break through to Americans. The propaganda in this country is unbelievably effective.
Yep.
Oh, it's so
and
good,
it affects every crevice, including the left. the left here.
Yes. It's so pervasive. And again, I get that I'm like a nerd who really looks at this stuff, but it is incredibly pervasive. Everything around you is propaganda. Literally everything around you is propaganda. All of it. I mean, every TV show you watch, every commercial that's on, every billboard you pass, every magazine that's in the doctor's office waiting room, the way that your grocery stores are set up, they're designed to make you behave a certain way. This is all like a form of propaganda. It's all a form of manipulation and narrative control. And seriously, that is the fight. We have to start breaking people out of that. They really do just control how we think and how we behave and how we act. And I mean, we see it with the algorithms and like the targeted ads that they do and all of this stuff. It's all designed to control you. And it's so effective. It's scary. It really is terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I think one big part of the solution is what we're doing right now, conversation, dialectics, and
as long as we can,
especially talking to people we disagree with, and not for argument's sake, but for, again, the sake of dialectics and learning from one another and trying to build alliances and do away with the bad parts. I know that's very general and ideal, but we have to talk to people we don't disagree with, and the conversations
that we don't agree with.
That we don't agree with. Sorry. And we have to have those conversations and not be afraid to.
Why do you love Nazis, Jesse?
Maybe even find out that we're wrong about some things, you know?
Yeah. Conversation isn't bad, first of all. And I don't know. Do you ever think that anything's going to change if you don't talk to people that you don't agree or that don't agree with you? Because ignoring people doesn't make them go away. For me, I would rather engage with those people and try to change their minds. That's just me though. Cause I would like to get shit done. I mean, it's just me. I would like to actually accomplish something rather than just feeling smugly superior to everyone around me.
Yeah. Wow.
That would be cool. I would actually like people to be able to go see a doctor, not just like bitch about it. You know, that would be cool.
How Red Brown of you.
I know. I'm such an asshole.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's not so much about changing minds. It's just putting out information that people might not know and trying to present it truthfully. So possibly
that's
they'll
more
change
what I
their
mean.
mind.
I'm just,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't mean that like I'm going to go force feed them and you know what I mean? Like try to change. No, I want to talk to people and engage in them and let them learn something. And you're right. Maybe I'll learn something and I'll change. I change my mind on stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. That's why I jokingly say all the time, I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time. I don't like, I'm constantly like, there's a multitude of issues that I'm like, man, I don't really know where I stand. I don't really know. Like, I'm still trying to figure this out, and that's okay. Yep. It's fucking okay. That's fine. You can't know everything. You can't have a position on everything because there's nuance and there's, you have to really like feel it out. And there's some things that gun control, I've completely 180'd on that shit. I used to be hardcore about gun control. After Sandy Hook, when Sandy Hook happened, I had a 7-year-old. And those kids were around the age of 7, and it broke me. I'm not kidding you guys. Sandy Hook broke me. I was fucking devastated by that. I don't know that I know I'm not the same. I'll never be the same after Sandy Hook. Just being a mother at that time with a child that age. And one of the kids in Sandy Hook was autistic. My child's autistic. And it was like, you know what I mean? It really broke me. And so I was hardcore gun control. And I have changed my mind. I've listened to people like Killer Mike, and I've listened to people, you know what I mean? Like I've listened to a lot of particularly Black leaders, that has made me realize that disarming the populace is a horrible idea for the Black community. That's a terrible plan. And in my ignorance and just, my emotional reaction, I just wasn't hearing that. But now I have heard that and I've changed my mind, and everybody should be open to that. Everybody should be open to new information. And my God's fucking dick. Hi, Daryl.
Yeah. And just building off of that, I know he's not the most endearing guy, but Sam Harris actually wrote a really good piece about why he's against gun control. And I do advise or recommend that people look that up and read it. Whatever you think of Sam Harris.
He's a dick.
Yeah. My sister actually rode in a like private taxi or whatever you call it with him once after a work event. And she said he was very cold and distant. So, but the piece he wrote, the logic in it is
Sound.
It's sound, yes. And I recommend that people read that. And
Yeah.
just forget
Yeah,
that Sam
it's okay.
Harris wrote
It's
it.
okay to change your mind.
Yep.
It's okay to, and sometimes it's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be something that I was very passionate about gun control. I was
Mhm.
super passionate. And so coming to that like change of heart was a little bit difficult. Like it's like admitting you're wrong. And that's hard for people. That's hard for anybody's ego. Daryl, you're such a dick, man. Come on. He's
Yeah,
such a
same.
turd. Anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah.
It
So
looks like your second microphone.
Daryl. He's such a dick. He's my buddy. This is seriously the best cat ever, y'all. He's the most chill motherfucker. He does not care about anything. He's a good cat. He's my dude. But you have been very generous with your time, Fee. I appreciate you coming by to talk about Peru. It's super important. I'm so like, this is like dorky, but I'm like so proud of you, like going international and like that's really cool. So thanks for doing it, first of all, for going to Peru and for covering something that's important. I know it's important to you personally, but I mean, it's cool for us to have somebody that we trust on the ground. So thank you for doing it. Do you want to tell I mean, I know everybody knows where the fuck Convo Couch is out, but do you want whatever, maybe you have some stuff coming up you want to talk about, or certain interviews or whatever you want to promo?
Yeah, so just look out for an article coming on Peru. That's coming out ASAP, and I will be updating you guys on the moment-to-moment situation that's happening in Peru. And I'm on Twitter, Fiorella_IM. You can find the Combo Couch on Rockfin on YouTube. We've been covering also the Georgia election, or the Georgia audit. There's audits happening all over the country. The point isn't to bring Trump back. The point is to just get to the bottom of like, do we have like to get to the bottom of like not having transparency, that to fix our election system. So Pasta's been doing a great job covering on that end, and we'll keep you guys posted. I mean, there's so much going on right now in the world. I'm going to have our friend from Colombia on Monday. So that's coming up as well. We need to get the truth about what's happening in Colombia, not from these other sources that are just completely just whitewashing the whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I just want to say, uplift the voices of people doing the work, and don't do it based on who's more popular. Do it based on who's actually doing the right coverage. And I thank you for bringing me on, because so many people have been so silent. I saw you going after them. I was laughing my ass off. You like going after
like anybody who tweeted about Peru. I'm like, oh, hey, did you hear Fiorella's in Peru? She's on the ground. Did you know that? She's on the ground. You should talk to her. Like everybody. I'm like, I'm going to slide into your comment section. I'm going to tell you.
I was laughing. But thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. And I hope more people keep up with this and learn from people from the country who have been on the ground, etc. So thank you for doing right thing.
Just a quick update. This is in the last hour. Peru's Fujimori repeats election fraud claim, trusts no jail. And this is from the Independent of London. So, so she's sticking to her guns so far.
Yeah, she's going to. She's going to. I mean, she's made it about communism now, so she can't back down. So that'll look weak. So it's
her third time running. So like Hillary was desperate to win, right? Like it's like that. She's like, I gotta get this.
Okay, that puts it in sharp relief. So okay, so thanks for coming on. We appreciate all that you do on Convo Couch. Shout out to Pasta too. His show with Shonda on opioid addiction is phenomenal. You guys should check that out, just as an aside.
For sure.
But thanks for coming on, and we will catch everybody next time.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Fee.